The March for Science is an international series of rallies and marches that holds in more than 600 cities across the world. It is a non-partisan movement to celebrate science and the role it plays in everyday lives. It is not just to emphasize that science upholds the common good, but to call for evidence-based policies in the public's best interest as well. Hello and welcome to AgriBiotech, a program that highlights the significance of biotechnology to agricultural development in Nigeria. I am Lara Afolayan. Today's episode of the program is coming to you from the Millennium Park right in the Abuja city center, where Nigeria's March for Science is taking place. All around me here are scientists who have come to March for Science in a bid to let the society know about its relevance to everyday lives. I will be bringing you highlights of the March for Science here today, and we'll also be speaking with some biotechnologists present here on the gains Nigeria's agricultural sector stands to gain from the use of this branch of science. As is the tradition on the program, we now get to see some agriculture stories. Members of Parliament from Eastern African countries are to launch the Eastern Africa Parliamentary Alliance for Food Security and Nutrition. It is a sub-regional platform aimed at promoting the right to food in Eastern Africa through improved legislation. A statement by the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations says the platform came after realizing that malnutrition continues to be a major impediment to economic development, whereby it is estimated that 58 million children under the age of 5 are too short for their age in Africa. Childhood malnutrition is costing Africa about 11% of gross domestic product every year, whereas preventing malnutrition delivers $16 in returns on investment for every $1 spent on the continent. A report by the United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization as well as the World Food Programme has shown that 113 million people from 53 countries experienced acute food shortages in 2018. This was down from 124 million in 2017. The bodies say that though the 9% improvement is commendable, the situation highlights the need for strengthened cooperation between humanitarian development and peace actors to reverse and prevent food crisis. The report showed that nearly 2/3 of those facing acute hunger are in just 8 countries, 5 of which are in Africa. It also revealed that 1/4 of the acutely food insecure were victims of climate and natural disasters. Welcome back. I'm still at the Millennium Park where the March for Science is taking place, and so much has been going on around me here. Let's now see what the scientists have been saying as they speak up for science. The March for Science has its roots in the United States. Town hall gatherings, rallies and outreaches in support of science are also organized on the sidelines of this march in parts of the world in solidarity with science. It primarily centers on the importance of science and its role in human lives. In Nigeria, a day of action by the Nigerian Alliance for Science, an affiliate of the Global Alliance for Science, is now being observed in solidarity with the March for Science around the world.
Science is a provider of solution. Science is evidence-based. I'm asking people out there to engage with science, to support science, really support us and speak for science, to help us in amplifying our voices, to all governments of Africa, not just Nigeria, but because this is everywhere, that science is here to stay.
People should allow science to take course in their life. People should stop fighting the biotechnology activities that are being made to promote the livelihood, provide food security and all other things as being obtained around the world.
Science is revolutionary and a catalyst to continuous development and improvements in solving challenges of climate change and food shortages. Those present at this gathering are pleased with government's efforts at promoting environmentally friendly practices in agriculture, but want the country to fully embrace climate-smart technologies, of which biotechnology is one.
The biotechnology is where to go. It's a part of life, because everywhere we have gone throughout the whole world, there's no country that have done well without biotechnology. It's a part of science. There's vaccine that they have now. In those days, people refused to take vaccine. And today, they like vaccine because it helped them. What is it? Is it not biotechnology? It's not science.
We have vaccines. We have the products of genetic modification, the products of gene editing and all. They are all products of science. It's a scientific venture. And that they are good for us. Science contributes to food security. Science helps in mitigating climate change. Other nations that have actually adopted this technology are doing so well. Their economies are booming. Where Nigeria and Brazil and Argentina were, on the same level, but today they've gone far. Why? It's because they've adopted gene editing. They've adopted the practice of modern biotechnology.
In agriculture, as we know, normally the normal pattern of either animal or crop improvement, it has been a conventional method of breeding, making some crosses using pollen grains, which is very difficult, very cumbersome. It requires a lot of capital input, a lot of land space to make selections. And for you to evolve a hybrid using conventional breeding method, you must make not less than 9 cycles of the same generation. But by using biotechnology, you can go ahead directly, select the gene of interest, insert it in your crop. Within short period of time, you can come out with a high yielding variety, the result variety of crop, animal, and other things, which is it's more specific, it's more direct.
The Nigerian government is advised to invest in research funding, which is critical to development, but is the most poorly funded by the authorities. Nigeria's recent approval for commercial release of the BT cotton and environmental release of the BT cowpea is described here as definitely a means of reducing pesticide use and increasing farmers' productivity. Lara Folayo, TVC News, Abuja. And joining me on the program is Dr. Abdulrazak Ibrahim of the Biochemistry Department of the Ahmadu Bello University in Zaria. Of course, is one of those who has been marching for science here at the Millennium Park, and I caught up with him to speak on his take on the use of this technology for agriculture. It's good to have you join me on agriculture. What was going through your mind as you marched for science earlier?
Well, the first thing that came to my mind was that recently there was this news about how poverty affects the size of brain of children. And then I remember that Nigeria is the poverty headquarters of the world. We have one of the largest population in the world. We have one of the poorest, some of the poorest regions in the world. And that change, those changes in brain sizes are related to nutrition. So all societies in which the food and nutrition security is compromised, you see that link between cognitive capacity, you see the link between poverty and productivity, not just in terms of crops, for example, but even productivity as humans. So, and to me what that meant is that, Nigeria needs to do more in science. We need to invest more in science and technology. We need to put more money where our food is. And that's why the March for Science is important, because it sensitizes the people, it sensitizes the public, sensitizes the government. You know, that we might have different, many policies, but some of them lying there, but we need to really tailor them and actually adopt the science and generate our own homegrown solutions to move forward, to be able to achieve economic transformation.
Okay, when you talk about homegrown solutions, what exactly do you mean?
I'm talking about what some people sometimes call the low-hanging fruits. For example, if you have a belt of cereal crops, you know, in northern Nigeria, we grow millet, cowpea, and so on. Why is cowpea an orphan crop? Why would you have IITA here, you know, having some of the best varieties in the world sitting on the shelves? Meanwhile, we have farmers producing at a very low productivity. Why shouldn't those technologies be scaled to those farmers? So, and the means to do that is through science, is through, you know, making people, the farmers, all the value chain actors having the capacity and the ability to adopt these new technologies and scale them.
What is your take on the use of genetic modification for agriculture?
This is an old debate. I think my stance over the past years has been that the science about the safety of GM crops is not even debatable. You know, all the scientific facts point to its safety. It's as any GM crop is as good as any non-GM crop, as long as you pay attention to the science. But then, because of the serious economic interest involved in it, you know, one of the points I usually make about why there's so much controversy about it is this. If you look at the crops that stand to benefit from the GM technologies like genetic modification, these are crops that are grown in the tropics. Cowpea, maize, millet, you know, soybean, and so on. There are leaders, global leaders in these crops like Brazil, like China, that have actually adopted GM technologies, and it's paying them. It's working for them. They have attained food security. Now we don't want to do it, or, you know, there's a lot of controversy around it here because somebody convinced a good number of people that they are harmful, that they cause cancer. But when you take the science, when you look at the scientific publications, you see that it's not true. And I say that there's this dimension which is economic about this debate, which is when you look at the most vocal critics of these technologies, they come from certain parts of the world where crops that stand to benefit from these technologies are not grown. Meanwhile, that same part of the world is the part that produces our chemicals, the part that produces our insecticides. So it is not in the interest of certain groups that I have a crop that does not require chemicals, that does not require some of the harmful pesticides and insecticides and herbicides that we use in our crops. So I think we really need to even move beyond the debate on GM crops. Hopefully we have not lost the same way we lost the Green Revolution, because there are new technologies that are emerging. You know, they're creating disruptive waves, you know, within the global economy. We're talking now about CRISPR-Cas crops. These are crops that are technically, you know, modified genetically, but they are not subjected to the same kind of biosafety scrutiny that the conventional GM crops are, because really, if you're not introducing a new DNA, you're not changing anything. But the impact, you know, in terms of development, in terms of food security, is high. And because they are not subjected to these regulations, they will soon flood our market.
What do you see this technology doing for Nigeria's agricultural sector?
It will completely transform us. You know, when you take rice, or when cowpea, or any crop for that matter, if you apply the right science, I see it transforming lives. It's not just about food. Look, farming is beyond just feeding yourself. If you have rice, what do you do with all the products coming out of the rice? You know, in Thailand and other countries where they have, you know, the rice value chain or any crop, the value chains have been really strengthened. is not just about the crop itself, it's about the simple, tiny products that you can line up. You can generate up to 100 products from cassava, up to 2,000 products from maize or from soybean. So once you strengthen that, you will have less people in farm. You have more people, more medium holder farmers, generating more food. That's enough to feed our local population and export, and still generate various other products from those crops. That should be the vision, and you cannot do this if you do not apply science.
What lessons can Nigeria learn from countries where this technology has been successfully used?
It's pretty obvious. These countries, they invest, on the average in Nigeria, like many African countries, we invest less than 0.3% in research and development, right? We need to invest more. You need to train more people. There's the contention that Africa needs to produce at least 1 million PhDs in the next few years if you really want to transform. So more PhDs, more scientists, more entrepreneurs. Our universities should not just be universities where you go and study things. You should be able to unpack the textbook, put it back together, and generate our own knowledge, because these are the kind of environments that bring about innovation. We need to create innovation. We need to produce entrepreneurs. We need to produce entrepreneurs that will transform our economy. So, and there are countries that have done it, in China, in Brazil, some in the US, Germany, and so on. We need to borrow those lessons and internalize them and put them into action. Okay. We don't even have a choice.
What do farmers in Nigeria stand to gain from the use of this technology for agriculture?
The farmers will be rich. They will be richer. They will live healthier lives. Their behavior, the rural economy will boost. More young people in rural area will have access to quality education, health, and so on. Once you strengthen the value chain system, and all of that, you have to apply the right kind of science. So it's not just GM crops, it's not just biofortification, it's the conjunction of the different scientific approaches. And when we say science, sometimes it's just a procedure. There's a procedure of doing things in an office. You follow that is science. So sometimes we forget about processes. When we forget about processes, we're not applying science in the way that we do things.
Very well spoken so far, Doctor, but we have to go on a quick break, and I will be right back. And my guest has been Dr. Abdulrazak Ibrahim of the Biochemistry Department of the Ahmadu Bello University in Zaria, speaking on agricultural biotechnology. AgriBiotech will continue shortly. Do stay.
Did you know that genetically modified organisms, GMOs, are safe and do not pose any risk, hazard, or danger to human, animal, and the environment? Neither do they cause cancer, infertility, sterility, tumor, or any adversity. There is safe use of GMO drugs like insulin, vaccine, rapid diagnostic test kits for malaria, HIV, hepatitis, and so on. The safety of GMOs is certified by the World Health Organization, WHO, Food and Agricultural Organization, FAO, European Food Safety Authority, EFSA, the National Academies of Science globally, the Royal Society, UK, and over 110 prize Nobel laureates. GMOs are safe, effective, and certified by MBMA in Nigeria.
Welcome back. The program is still AgriBiotech, reaching you from the Millennium Park in Abuja, Nigerian capital. And Dr. Ibrahim is still here with me. Thanks for your time, Doctor. And just before we went on that break, we were speaking on the benefits of this technology for the Nigerian agricultural sector. Now, only last year we saw the approval for the commercial release of the BT cotton, and earlier this year we saw the approval for the environmental release of the BT cowpea. How did you receive that news?
It was great news. Great news. My colleagues from Brazil, where I was trained, they called me. They were like, "Oh, this is really very good. Nigeria is taking its rightful leadership position in Africa in moving this technology forward," because we really have to do our own science by ourselves. No one will come from outside and do it for us, and that for me is the greatest lesson I have learned in this technology, in GM technology from Brazil. You know, when there was a lot of controversy about companies taking over people's food sovereignty and so on, what Brazil did was to invest in its own scientists, partner with the private sector, including the companies. You know, we can have private companies coming, partnering with our public laboratories to generate these new technologies. And I'm so happy that, you know, we have attained this, we have reached this milestone, you know, and thanks to the hard work of the many scientists, you know, our colleagues from Ahmadu Bello University, our colleagues from OFAB, the Open Forum for Agriculture, Biotechnology in Africa, from the National Agency for Biotechnology, all of those collective efforts, you know, have led to this great success, which I believe will have a significant positive impact on our economy, on the people, and the livelihoods of our people.
What will you advise on how Nigeria can make the most of these approvals?
We need to fast track the process, all right? We need to strengthen our seed system. We have the seed system in the country. We need to strengthen it, fast track the process, because really we cannot wait. When your population is exploding, when you have 200 million people in your country, you cannot afford to be playing hide and seek. You know, you cannot afford to be slow in technology adoption, its commercialization. So we need to really fast track these processes. There are points from which we can extrapolate and move forward.
What does genetic modification do for food production that makes it the preferred technology?
Because it's easy, because it's faster than traditional breeding. If you want to do traditional breeding, which is technically the same, it will take you years. It will take you sometimes 40 years in some. The crops that we're eating today, maize, if you look at maize and you trace its ancestry is nothing compared to the maize that we're consuming. It took our ancestors thousands of years to come up with the maize that we consume today. Now we have this technology that can fast track it, sometimes over a 13-year period or 4. So this is the win-win situation. This is the beauty of this technology. It's able to bypass what normally happens under natural condition. You fast track it and you generate desirable products, which in this case are the GM crops.
How will you react to arguments against this technology?
I think all the arguments against them are not scientific. As long as things are not scientific, they really do not eventually make economic sense. The arguments about being harmful, causing cancer, if you look at the studies, you know, you consult the scientific literature, it's really not there. If you follow the normal scientific peer review process, you know, there's one particular article that has generated a lot of controversy, which I think I would like to mention. It's an article published by a French scientist. His name is Serrarini. He published and demonstrated that rats fed with soybean, you know, that they cause GM soybeans, or corn, I think, they cause cancer. And, you know, if you study the work, look at the paper, you see that, first of all, these are rats that on their own, they develop cancer, right? So even if you give them water, all you give them is water, on their own, their cells are highly susceptible to cancer. And then there are other statistical flaws. In fact, eventually it was so bad that he had to retract that study, you know, and he called a press conference and you know, it was what scientists normally do not do, you know, to call a press conference because you want to publish a paper. So, but then the damage has been done. I think that was the target, unfortunately, because, you know, the public doesn't go down into digging the real science behind it. And so that's why sometimes some of us actually, you know, engage in this kind of talk, so that people see scientists as simplifying science and making it easy for public comprehension, because really it's controversy.
And what will be your message to critics here in Nigeria?
I think let's dialogue, you know, let's talk. Let us sit down at the table, scientists, the business developer, the activists, because at the end of the day, I think we all want to achieve sustainable development. We want to have a clean environment. We want to have ecologically correct way of farming, of growing products. Let us talk. Let's agree. Let's come to a consensus of the science. Because if the general public does not accept a particular product, there's really no point scientists investing their energy and resources conducting research in that.
What is your final words to the Nigerian authorities on how Nigeria can make the most of this technology in the agricultural sector?
They need to do more. They need to invest more in education, pay more money for our researchers to do research, support more PhDs, produce the next generation of agricultural research for development practitioners, scientists, crop scientists, value chain developers, the economists, all of those people around specific value chains, have thus the cohorts of experts to develop our different crops. Because really, if you do not put the right money at the right place, you won't have enough food to eat, let alone export.
So thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you very much, Lara, for having me.
Wow, it has definitely been a fun-filled day today at the Millennium Park, where Nigerian scientists have been marching for science and speaking up for the use of biotechnology, which of course is a branch of science in Nigeria's agricultural sector. And at this point, we call it a day on today's episode of the program. Do send your emails to agribiotech1@yahoo.com, send us tweets at agribiotech13, or post your comments on the Facebook page AgriBiotech on TVC. I am Lara Folayo. Goodbye.